This is a one-speaker meeting. Please join with me in welcoming our speaker tonight, Jerry.
Jerry, I'm an alcoholic. Thank Robert for asking me to speak. I don't know about you guys, there's really nothing I'd rather do on a Wednesday night than spend 40 minutes talking to a room full of strangers about the worst, most embarrassing moments of my life. But I also want to say, you know, I really, really love this program, and I know there's a lot of newcomers, people trying to get clean in this room who may be having a hard time, and I just want to say I didn't really love this program when I came in, that's for sure, and I was just one of those guys who couldn't get clean, you know. I tried a lot of times, and I'd put some time together, even got a year and a half once, and I would go back out, and there's always somebody at the meeting who, like, people don't want to sit beside because it's like they have relapsosis, you know, and and I was that guy, you know, and I say that because when I speak, you know, I try to think mostly about the newcomer, because I didn't like people that much, I didn't like myself that much. And I found when I listened to the first meeting I ever went to, you know, sort of paddling up in my paper slippers at Cedars, somebody shared about how they missed their Porsche payment. And I was out the door, you know. I blamed them for having to get needles within the next 15 minutes. So I just point that out because if you are new and you're sitting here and you're just dying and you're looking at the speaker and thinking, you know, come on. Who cares about you? You're full of crap, and I can't make it. You know, just know that almost nothing more is required than just not running out the door, you know, and you got a free hour here, and sometimes that's what's going to make the difference. So beyond that, it's being Thanksgiving and all, you know, big family holiday, and I'm sure you all came from perfectly normal, happy, well-adjusted, loving homes, and I'll just tell you a little bit about where I came from, because I think in a lot of ways that's sort of, you know, it's like gladiator school for us, sort of like where we learn how to do what we do and how to survive. So for me, I grew up back east in Pittsburgh, not to brag, Pennsylvania, and just a little bit about my, you know, it was, you know, everybody's got their childhoods, but I think we sort of learn how to be and how we operate in the world. And for me, it was about sort of, at a very early age, it's just different. You know, I grew up in a really kind of working class, poor Italian and Irish neighborhood. So we, of course, were the only Jews, which meant at like the age of 6, I'd get the shit kicked out of me for killing Jesus on the way home from school, which I apparently didn't a blackout because I couldn't remember it. And other people have had it. I just mentioned, you know, so right away, you know, you feel different, you feel weird. My father was an immigrant. He came over, he worked in coal mines and stuff, but worked his way up to the point where he actually had a job that required a white shirt. And, you know, he politician, civil rights guy, and so he's kind of well known. So that also made me feel kind of strange because everybody else worked in factories and breweries and stuff. And finally, also about my old man was, he'd be on TV and he was, you know, a very noble guy working for good causes. Then he would come home, you know, with the beer and put his head through a wall and, you know, just rage. And for some reason we never get the holes in the wall fixed, so it was like a museum of Dad's rage, you know. I was like, well, I remember that one, you know. And finally, my mother was, we used to think she was taking vacations, and I found out later she was going to this place called Western Psychiatric to get electroshock, which they used to do back then. You know, and again, you know, other people have had it worse, but it, you know, and she would just, you know, she was a very disturbed woman, needless to say, and very mean. And so my poor sister, who was 6 years older than me, we would have these screaming fights in the house, and just loud, creepy, weird. And my sister was so nervous, she would do this thing with her hair like this. And so she went half bald when she was in grade school. So it's like, okay, I'm in kindergarten, I got the guy putting his head through the wall, the mother getting electroshock, and the half-bald sister, and so what you learn at an early age is that double life. When you leave your house, you have to act like it's okay. You never want people to know what's really going on inside. It's like a double life, which, I don't know about you guys, but for me that's like perfect preparation and dress rehearsal for kind of learning how to be a dope fiend and alcoholic. I wasn't like a party guy. I just got loaded because I wanted to endure and to kill the pain, and I didn't like to let people know I was doing that. So at a very early age, I got that skill of like fronting, basically, just learning to lie, learning to be one thing on the outside and another thing on the inside. And just to fast forward a little bit about this program, because like linear thinking has not been a gift of the program for me. What the steps do is make it unnecessary for you to front like that. And you can sort of breathe for the first time in your life. And so long story short, I'm that creepy kid, with the secrets and the parents and the house that kind of like smells a little weird when people come over. And what that does for me, and basically the story of my entire life and work, just gives me shame. Just completely ashamed. There's all that going on, and I'm sure none of you can relate to this. There's the naked cuddling with mom, the inappropriate, creepy, all your friends are doing it. Really? I'm 12, but, which I know creeps some people out, but it's just a reality, and the fact is, you get up here and look cool, or you get up here and march out all the creepy stuff. And the first sponsor I had told me something about this program that has really stuck with me. He said, when you're pitching, if everything you say doesn't make you squirm, you're lying and wasting people's time, So if this is a squirm fest, so be it. And I hope you can't relate. What can I say? So my father, when I was 16 years old, decided that his drug of choice would be carbon monoxide, so he goes in the garage, turns on the gas in the car, kills himself, which one of my darkest secrets was when I found that out, my first reaction was, yeah, now I have an excuse to feel the way I felt already, I could milk it. Which is a horrible thing to say. It's not that I didn't love the guy. I mean, I had already left home by that time, but, when something like that happens for people like us, it's like, okay, now the rest of the world will understand, that I'll get a pass. So basically from the age, it was just on. From that age on, I just worked at and pretty much stayed high every day from like 15 or 16 on, but felt okay about it because, I had problems. And really never learned how. They say you stop developing emotionally at the age when you start getting high every day. That might be optimistic. I don't know. But I do know that I have a 17-year-old kid, and I feel like when I talk to her, I have to act mature because she's more grown up than I am, So anyway, I ended up living in New York for a while, and I picked I'm 53, some of that age, when drugs, you weren't just getting high, it was a social thing, you're making a statement. So I was also a person, I had a thing I wanted to pursue in life, I wanted to, it sounds pretentious talking about being an artist, but I had a kind of work I wanted to do was basically, it's not that I had any talent, I wanted to find something you could do naked, loaded, and alone at 3 in the morning and possibly make a living. So, it wasn't that I was any good, but those were the only skills I had, so. And again, I just mention that because it's a world of delusion, it's just a world of delusion. But on some level, if you delude yourself enough, you just might make it because you start believing your own crap and stories. So drugs got really bad. I was in college in New York. I dropped out, did all kind of, the typical stuff. And I ended up in a bit of trouble, and I decided I would move to California to, get away from drugs. Again, the kind of thinking that doesn't always make sense in retrospect. So within like 15 minutes, I'm in LA, and naturally it just gets worse, and I end up with the problem was that I started I'm out in LA, and I started getting kind of weirdly successful at something I hated. So I had to get loaded to do the job I was kind of ashamed of, that made the money, that bought me the drugs I needed to handle the gig I needed drugs to do, if that makes any sense. Many drugs understand that, but I hope you can relate. It's just basically, it's just a continuation of the thing I learned as a kid, which is the double life. Who I am is so horrifying, I can't face it, so I have to front the entire time. And I basically stayed loaded for a long time, and was kind of making money, but not doing anything I really wanted to do. And eventually that fell apart, and my last resort was some poor woman who needed a green card married me for $3,000. I was cheap. And it's that weird thing, the stuff you do. I mean, I wasn't much of a gangster out there. I ended up basically, I married this poor woman, and, eventually she wanted to go out, which I thought was really weird because we were married. And then we ended up living together, which was really corny because we were married. And then we had a kid. And that lasted briefly. I mean, and I'll tell this story just because, again, when I first came into the program and was a newcomer, well, I was always a newcomer. I mean, I would get clean and sober long enough to remember with the kind of clarity the things I did. And they were so painful that I went back out again. Because, I mean, if you don't work the steps, you're kind of stuck in that place. You need the drugs not to feel. Then you get clean and you feel, and it hasn't occurred to you that the reason you do the steps is so you're not living in horrific, painful, unendurable shame, and you go out. So what happened with me is I was really strung out and in the OBGYN men's room when the doctor kind of tracked me down and told me, hey, the baby's about to be born, put on these scrubs, which some of you may know were short sleeves. I hadn't worn short sleeves in about 5 years at that point, and I had just fixed, and my veins were kind of that banana black bruised thing that you get, and basically, long story short, I was kind of like bleeding from the arms, and I go in there, I just hit, and I'm just getting off, it's finally hitting as I'm like, I got the scissors in my hand, and I'm doing the umbilical, and it's like, I mean, the fact that my kid isn't a cyclops today is a miracle, I remember walking in there, the doctor just kind of looked at me like, he looks at me, looks at my eyes, like, man, with a father like that, I might as well just like put her back where she came from, And it just hit me so, because I was like outed, and in the most mortified, there's like nothing cool about that. I used to think being a dope fiend and alcoholic was very cool, which I'm sure for some people it is. But for me, it's like, unless you think, puking on your shoes is cool, and doing the kind of thing I just did. And it was so horrifying to me that when you tell this story to a room full of addicts and alcoholics, they don't go, wow, you must have stopped after that, huh? Which, if you tell that story to a room full of people who haven't done the kind of stuff we do, it's like, wow, so you quit, right? It's like, not really, And it just got worse, and I ended up basically, as we tend to do, blowing all the gigs and just kind of hustling around MacArthur Park doing that whole thing. And as I say, despite the fact it's like the 18th Street guys, all this shit going on, my hustle was like, boost a can of Dinnymore beef stew from Vaughn's, put a dent in it and return it and get $1.99, and that was my, crime wave. And, it takes a long time to make bank when you're like working dented beef stew gigs, and so, you'd hustle for like all day and then buy a, sliver of soap and it was over, and smoke it anyway because you never know, there might be some in it. And, I just mention this because when I first got loaded and, all my heroes were dope fiends, your Keith Richards, Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, Lenny Bruce, all these all these guys, and as I'm sure you've heard said from the podium, they ain't there when you're kicking with a hot towel, It's just you. And because I thought that the kind of work I did, if I needed an adjective, it was in a syringe, you know what I mean? If I needed to, get this creative thing and sit in a chair, basically, I needed to be loaded to do what I did. And eventually I needed to be loaded just to be who I was. And then I needed to be loaded to talk to you because I had to steal from you. And, I would live with three 560-pound women at once, and I would just walk from one to the other because I had lost my car in a deal, and it's got more and more horrifying, and it just, as has been said, being a junkie and alcoholic, it's like the worst gig in the world, It's just another bad-paying 9-to-5 job with no benefits, And, I just burned out, and I started to try to get clean, and what happened with me is I started going to meetings, and because I had such a deep shame and was so convinced that the kind of stuff I did was just so unforgivable and so deeply, deeply foul and mortifying and creepy, which is basically how I felt as a child, I was very skilled at feeling that way, that I just couldn't stay clean. I'd listen to speakers, I would meet people and I think, yeah, they're kind of telling my story, but obviously they don't feel what I'm feeling because they're not loaded. And if you feel what I feel, you have to be loaded. So I kept trying to get clean, and I'd make it for a little while, and then I'd relapse, and finally what happened for me was I just burned out. I had nothing. And for me, I did a couple rehabs. I was the guy at McDonald's at 38 wearing a little hat, I'd go to a rehab in Phoenix, and they put me to work at McDonald's, and, I was that guy peeing in the McMuffin batter because I was a little annoyed that I had to do that for a living. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just saying, Hey, man, when you have self-hate, it sprays everywhere, That's just how it is. And I'm not trying to be, nauseating, but I was a nauseating guy. I was the kind of guy I hated, and I was stuck being me. So and the very reaction that you just gave me is the reason I stayed loaded, because my first sponsor was my first sponsor just kind of disappeared. My second sponsor was a very genteel fellow. And when I told him I sort of got halfway through, my stab at a 4-step, and he was so creeped out. I could just see him getting ready to spray the Lysol on the chair, when I left. And again, I just felt, you know what, man? This is a great program, and it works for you, but I'm a dead man, And finally, I got a sponsor who really understood what it was like, and who asked me this question that no one had ever asked me, which is basically my constant whine was man, I still feel like crap, and I hate myself, and, I'm still lying. And he said to me, what do you get out of feeling like that? And that was really an annoying question because, as a junkie and alcoholic, I want to be a victim. I want to be a guy who has to do what I do because I have no choice. It's very dramatic. And what I learned by working with this guy was a very, very tolerant, some of you might know him, Cubby, he was in this program forever, and one of those AA stars, but he was a very kind guy. And the lesson I learned from that was, basically, man, you're in love with your pain. It's a control thing. Because when you're out there and you're in a lot of pain and you can't do anything, you just have to suffer and it's over. But basically said it's like the sugar tit thing. He said, if you're a kid and you're in pain and you can control the breast, then you get it and you're cured. That's what being a dope fiend is. That's what being an alcoholic is. It's just a control thing. You can be in pain because you're going to cure it, and you have that power. So when you get clean, you take that power away. So you're still in love with being a baby. You're still in love with being in pain. But because your lazy ass isn't doing a step, you're just stuck. And that was the first time I got something which, if you're new and makes no sense, I'll just try to explain, which is, these steps, they're not like homework, They're not like a punishment for getting clean. What they are is something that you can use to literally like take out that rotten tooth of pain that makes you feel the need to use all the time. And it sort of blew my mind at the time that all I had to do was the one thing I thought would kill me my entire life, which was be real with somebody and be straight and be honest. And I didn't know that it would work, and I didn't know much about God, and I'm not in love with people who get up and tell me about God from the podium. But what he told me when I said, yeah, I can do all this, but I don't know if it's going to work, he said, listen, man, imagine as a kind of science project for 30 seconds what it would feel like to know that no matter what, you're taken care of. Just imagine that. To know that there's nothing in this world that is going to make you have to use because it's going to be okay. But I don't believe it, but no, man, just imagine, 15 seconds. And it's just, I imagine, I got this feeling, like, well, that's as close to what I know about God is, just like this kind of, wow. That would be an amazing feeling. Too bad it's complete garbage and would never happen, but it's really amazing, and thank you for that 15 seconds, But what I realized, because they always say principles rather than personalities, but it wasn't like that for me. I needed people who I knew were harder core, badass, suffering people so that I could trust them. Because as a lot of junkies and alcoholics and pillheads and crackheads are, I'm a pain snob. So if you haven't been to hell, I don't trust you, which is why I pretty much trust everybody in this room, because you can tell, you look in somebody's eyes, it's just, you might have had a completely different life, but they've been to that place, which is so desperate and so 3 a.m. that, it doesn't require an explanation. And when this guy who I knew had like kicked in the joint, and like myself, I wasn't one of these like sunshiny people who like, knocked over mom's hors d'oeuvre table and got sober at 22. I mean, I kind of washed ashore at like 39, man. I was like, my life was like more than half over, or depending on the mood my liver's in on any given day, And I respected that because, when you get most of your life, you've lived as a junkie and a liar and a drunkard and a scammer and, again, as this guy said to me, I don't got to teach you anything. You just have to unlearn everything you know. And that's what the steps did for me, I had to learn to have faith, not because, Jesus was up there beaming down on me, but because on a very practical level, if I could act like maybe I was going to be taken care of, then I would get that feeling. And when I got that feeling, I could get out of my own head and be of some use to somebody else. Because when you come where I come from, self-respect and self-esteem are not really like top of the hit parade on things you come out of the chute with. So if I could do that and feel a certain kind of peace, I could give something to somebody else. So if I couldn't do it for me, I could do it for them. And I trusted this person enough to do a third step, which in all honesty was kind of creepy because we got down on our knees and held hands and prayed, and I was still like, hope he doesn't make a move, But that's where I came from. That's how I thought, man, but it worked out. Didn't make a move. And I did the third step. And just the more things you do in this program that are completely creepy and completely alien to your whole experience, the better you get at being clean. Because, when you think about it, what is the weirdest thing for people like us to be? Not loaded. That's what we are. I'm never surprised when people relapse. I'm surprised when people don't relapse. I get that. I spent 40 minutes today with a great friend of mine from New York who had 5.5 years, went to a meeting every day, sponsored half a dozen people. Boom, he's out. He's on the pipe. He's hanging with trannies. He's gone, And he's like, I don't know what I did. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what you did. Just come back, Because the only other thing I know about this program, which is completely alien to me, is that you can't think you're not going to figure shit out, ever. You are never going to figure this out. You just have to do it. Until I realized that I didn't have to believe in the steps to just do them, I was nowhere, because I thought I had to figure them out. I thought to analyze them. My brain is useless, man. It's just useless. I can rationalize anything. So it's best if I take thinking out of the equation and just do what somebody suggests to me, somebody I trust. And again, for newcomers out there, if you're anything like me, I don't trust anybody. Because when you're kind of working a con on some level as you breathe, how can you believe anybody else, And the hard thing, I'll just say this again, talking to the newcomer and talking to the person who's out there just dying and thinking, I can't do this. If you can just find one person to trust, just one, forget everything else. It's no picnic coming in here and holding hands when your palms are sweaty and singing happy birthday and, all this. It's a strange gig, especially when you're kicking, and you're a little moist, But if you really, really break it down, you don't have to buy the whole 4-year tuition, You just find one person to trust. And that, at least for me, that was the breakthrough, I'm not saying I stayed clean, because what happened for me was very peculiar, but I know other people it's happened for, is I relapsed. Finally, I got clean, and at about a year and a half, I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard, and I bumped into somebody. Said, "What happened to you, man?" I told him my story, and long story short, I ended up getting successful at something I really wanted to do. Like, my dream came true. I had something kind of like, I had success, and I was given through this program a gift for one reason, which is the thing I always wanted to do in life, that kind of art thing that I was talking about, not until I walked away from it, because every time I tried to do it, I got loaded. So I finally walked away from it and gave it up. Said, to hell with it. If that's what it takes, I'll be a McDonald's boy, And then I got it. I took the thing between me and my sobriety, got rid of it, and then I got the thing. And I got really successful and really lucky, and I couldn't believe it, and it was great and amazing. And because of the life I led, I had no experience with things going right. I had no experience of quote-unquote success, and it was so uncomfortable that I had the great good fortune to destroy my life all over again. Only this time I realized I couldn't blame it anybody. It was exactly what my sponsor had said. I was more familiar with that warm bath of misery, man, That was where I felt good feeling horrible because I understood it. When everything I thought I wanted came to me, and I had it, and my dreams came true, and I felt even worse, it was just over for me. And I used, and it was really bad and really embarrassing, and I lied about it for a long time, kind of nationwide, And it was, a lot of people know, it's so much harder to come back than it is to come in for the first time. And if anybody's relapsed or relapsed hard or come back after a period of time when your friends are giving you that kind of, skanky sideways look, man, I really, really understand, because that is what really separates, the people who are going to make it from the people who aren't, is you just have to be willing to accept the judgment people are going to have, which they have because they're scared. And I came back in, and I was able to stay clean because I had found something out which I had heard, but hearing things doesn't really matter. I got it inside that there's nothing that can happen out there that is a requirement for me staying clean. I got what I thought I wanted, and I felt worse than ever, so I knew it wasn't that. Because, we're drunks, we're junkies, so, we can win the lottery, but we're going to start bitching about the color of the bag the money came in, It's just, I got what I want, it's just not right. I better use, because, they screwed me again, And I wouldn't wish the kind of relapses I've had and you guys have had on anybody, but I will say this, you know, and this looks like a room full of people who I think will understand, but you know, if you're sitting there and you've destroyed your life and you've lost everything and the people you're closest to won't even let you in their house, congratulations, you know, because until nobody would answer the phone, nobody would let me in, nothing. I mean, nobody. That's when I got clean, man, because the last person I had to con was me, and I couldn't con me anymore. And when I kind of came crawling back, it was like, okay, whatever. I'm done, you know. Wasn't glamorous, wasn't cool. But I was able to start working the steps, and I was able to put some time together, not because I was like spiritual giant, because I was able to trust somebody and to see that, you know, they were right. And what happens is when you get clean for a little while, the great thing about this program, and it's like opposite world of like the rest of the world out there. I mean, the worst stuff you do in here, the most embarrassing, mortifying, never tell anybody with a gun to your head, that's going to save somebody's life, you know? And it took me a long time to realize that because shame was in my DNA. I mean, that's what my people do. We shame, you know? Long line of shame experts. And when we're not feeling ashamed, we're shaming somebody else because that's what we do. It's a cultural thing. And the great thing in this program is the worse and lower your bottom is, and the more horrific things you've done to people who trusted you, whatever form that takes, you know, fill in the blank, the more you're going to be able to help somebody else. And that is such a great feeling because out there in the world, you know, you can't, you know, that stuff doesn't really play on the resume, you know? But in here, because A, if you're like me, you don't trust anybody who doesn't have a history of that stuff. And B, you know, we like hearing those stories, you know? It's just, you know, in retrospect, when I think about the woman who missed her Porsche payment, that was probably hellish for her. But I've learned to withhold judgment, and again, that's a hard thing because I'm hardwired to judge because I was always ashamed of myself. And I remember once going to a meeting I was dragged to somewhere, and I was sitting next to this like 80-year-old woman who it turned out was a speaker, thinking, oh great, it's like church lady, you know. And I'd taken somebody, you know how it is when you take somebody to a meeting, there's always like the worst speaker in the world, you know. And then this lady gets up there and she's like, yeah, well, you know, it was like 1935 and 45. I had this Tommy gun and we like went into this drugstore and I shot up this pharmacist and I hit his testicle, you know. And, Jesus Christ, man, you know. It was like the greatest story I ever heard. And it was, I mean, I wanted someone to adopt me, you know. And, but the thing of it is, I got my, you know, I was like, bitch slapped once again by the fact that I had walked in and judged. Because I don't know what cool is. I don't know what anything, you know. Everybody in here is sitting on a gold mine of like life-saving, horrific material that they can like march out with a sponsee or some poor, I'm really trying not to swear because Robert knows I have an issue. And, you know, there's some poor person out there who really will be saved by hearing everything you have to keep from everybody in the straight world. And it's just such a great opportunity. And I don't always like going to meetings, and I'm not always like a chipper guy, but one thing I've learned is, it's a terrible metaphor, and you've already groaned at me, but I'm going to march out anyway. I go to this Hollywood YMCA, which has like a hydro pool full of really old people. And they had to institute this program where when one of these very old people can't control their bladder, a red cloud forms near them and drifts. You know, it's like, oh my God, there's the red cloud, you know. And what I realize on a day when I feel really bad, that's like the red cloud drifting out from me towards everybody else, you know. It's not that I need to get happy so I'll feel better. I've spent my life with miserable people, and it's contagious. And I don't want to make people feel bad. Well, I do, but I try not to. I'm lying, but I try not to. And I got 5 more minutes. It's not like there's, some pearls of epic wisdom going to come dripping out. So I'll just say very briefly that, again, for the newcomer or anybody, you can have time. Doesn't matter if you're just sitting there dying and you don't think you can get clean, I just have to say one more time, I was you. I was that guy who just couldn't make it and kept relapsing and creeped people out and ripped off sponsors. And I was well into sobriety, ripping off my ex-wife with an ATM card, and then saying, when I'd pick up the kid and she'd be like, "This is just so awful," I'm like, "Yeah, these goddamn junkies, I don't know how," until you realize that they take a picture every time you use the ATM, and I was sober, not for long, but I was at the time. And, there's nothing you can do that disqualifies you. And in fact, just the opposite. And if I said something here that helps somebody, great. If not, not. But just find one person you can trust and know that if you have destroyed your life and hurt everybody and can't stand to look in the mirror, man, it's the best thing in the world. And it's when you come in, it's the people who come in and get the AA tattoo you got to watch out for, But if you're feeling miserable and you're new and you don't think you're going to make it, you will. And that's the miracle. So thanks a lot.
Okay, I would like to thank the people who read for us tonight, AK for Chapter 5, and Michael for the 12 traditions. Let's give them a hand. And it's time for Secretary's announcements.
Robert, alcoholic. Hi. Let's thank Jerry for speaking tonight. And thank Tim for leading a great meeting. Newcomers, out-of-towners, and people who took chips and cakes, we have a report on that, kind sir?
Yeah, my name is Michael, alcoholic.
Hey, Michael.
Tonight, our newcomers were Matt, John, Sierra, Keith, Razan, Annie, Katie, Shelley, Alex, and Dallas.
Good deal. Could those of us who have commitments at this meeting stand up and check in real quick?
William, alcoholic seat saver.
William.
Mary, alcoholic.
Hey, Mary.
Dave, alcoholic chips.
Dave.
Mary, alcoholic greeters.
Mary.
An alcoholic named Dave. I recorded this meeting. If you'd like a CD of tonight's talk, let me know. Afterwards, I'll have one next week and have last week's, and the previous week's.
Hey.
Maya, I bring the food.
Maya.
Vivian, alcoholic, I bring birthday cake.
Vivian.
AK.
Hi, AK. Yeah! And you thought it was a thankless job. Bill?
I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Bill.
I'm covering H&I for Jay. So I'll pay H&I's hospitals and institutions. We bring money to these institutions to help people who are locked up and struggling. So I'm going to pass the thing around a little bit, collect money for that.
Thanks, Bill. Or we'll see that there's some receptacle if you can contribute afterwards.
I'm Brian. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Brian.
Sign your cards at the podium after the meeting.
Swell. Hey, Melissa.
I'm Melissa.
Jody, alcoholic. I'm standing in for Patty tonight.
Jody.
And our expenses were $109.54. So I'm going to put the basket at the podium.
Swell. Thank you, one and all.
My name is Tim. I'm an alcoholic. This has been a regular Wednesday night speaker meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you for coming and keep coming back. I'd like to thank Robert for the opportunity for leading the meeting tonight. Now, if there, after a moment of silent meditation for the alcoholic who still suffers, would Frank lead us in the Lord's Prayer?
Who keeps us sober?